Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show. And I'm going to start off with, I'm going to give you the origin of a brand new sound bump that going forward I'm going to use. I couldn't load it up today. I want to share this story with you. So I've got like 4 nephews. One of my nephews, his name is Jace on my sister's side. He's my sister's child. He has recently, he's got an iPad, much like, every kid in this day and age has one. I think he's like less than 5. I think he's like 4 years old, maybe 5. But he's got an iPad and he loves his iPad. And he's learned how to FaceTime us. So he'll like FaceTime me, he'll FaceTime my other brother, sometimes both, and it's always at the most random times or most inconvenient times, like I'm washing dishes. Or
no heads up, just
out of the blue.
Man.
Well, my sister then taught him how to send voice messages. So now he sends voice messages. And she was telling me this story of how him and my brother Isaac, he's been sending him voice messages like, hey, Isaac, or Uncle Isaac, do you want to come over to the house today? Do you want to go play? Do you want to play Roblox with me? And all this stuff. And I guess my brother Isaac had just texted him. He was like, yeah, nephew, that sounds great. Let me know like what your mom says. And he sends him back this voice message that I thought was hilarious. And it just immediately spoke to me as a new future potential Shortbox sound drop. You know how much I love my sound drops. This was my little nephew's response to my brother texting him a response back.
Uncle Isaac, I can't read. Send me a voice message.
I thought that was hilarious. Uncle Isaac, I can't read. I just love like the awareness and the honesty.
Uncle Isaac, I can't read. Send me a voice message.
I can't read. Motherfucker, send me a voice message. Yeah, I thought that was cute. So
That's hilarious.
You got the first preview of a future sound drop that I'm going to abuse to death. I can't read. I can't read. All right, man. Ed, you ready? This is gonna be I feel like this week has just been
tragedy.
A heavy week, man. Yeah. A heavy week, and I'll be honest with you, that Black Panther movie. Oh man, it came at an interesting time for comic book fans. Mm-hmm. You know, like I think everyone was relatively excited about, a new MCU movie, especially a Black Panther one. I think, the pressure and everything surrounding the movie with Chadwick Boseman. That movie could not have come out on a more weirdly appropriate, or I don't know if ironic or somber week, dude. No. Comic fans were in their fucking feels this week. And then you go see Black Panther and it's like, man, I am just grieving. So hopefully we'll find, hopefully we'll keep this one lighthearted or in some way fun. But how about we going to get this show started? Let's go and bring in the intro music and let's do our jobs.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Shortbox Podcast.
The Shortbox Podcast is recorded live from Jacksonville, Florida.
Short Box Nation, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing today? And I sincerely ask that this week. If you are a comic fan that's been keeping up with the news this week, I kind of got an idea of how you're feeling, but I want to know, man. Hopefully you guys are feeling better. Hopefully you guys are feeling great and ready for another excellent episode. To all of our new friends joining us for the first time, my name is Botter. Welcome to the Short Box Podcast, the comic review and talk show where you hear the best conversations about comic books and other forms of pop culture that they inspire. It is my honor to welcome you to episode 374. It's just me and Ed today, so I'll save you the usual extravagant and cheeky introductions that I like to do. It's just a two-man show today. What up, Ed?
What's up, man?
I'm tired. It's been a busy week. Not just like from the emotional,
and we had the hurricane,
context.
too.
Damn, that's right. We also fucking had a hurricane.
What a week.
Did it become a hurricane? Or was it a tropical storm?
Late.
Oh, yeah, very late in the game.
It did a surge,
Much like its positioning in the month. Very fucking late in the year. It's like, come on, Florida. Yeah, it's been a busy week. So, listeners, today we'll be taking a departure from our normal comic spotlights to catch up with the latest comic news and pop culture headlines. Unfortunately, this week hasn't been filled with a lot of happy headlines. So I'll let you know now. I'll give you a forewarning that we're going to spend a lot of time paying our respect and celebrating the careers of three comic icons and legendary artists that left this mortal world way too soon. And we're going to do our best to keep it, hopeful and, a celebratory thing. All right. It's already been a lot of somberness this week. We're bringing some positive energy to this episode today. That's how I'm going to approach it. Now, I encourage you to check out the timestamps listed in the show notes below, since we will be talking about such a variety of topics. Maybe there's one that piques your interest particular. Maybe you want to skip one. That's all good. And if you're looking for our in-depth Black Panther Wakanda Forever review, that is exclusively available on our Patreon. All right, that is for our Patreon community exclusively for the time being. And Ed, I've actually got some good news, man.
Oh, we need it.
Speaking of Patreon, I'd like to make a big deal in welcoming our newest members. Members being plural, all right? We got two new people that joined the Patreon today. So let's go ahead and bring the trumpets for them. I want to go ahead and welcome and congratulate two people on joining our Patreon community and thus making maybe the smartest decision, financial decision of their lives, or at least for the year 2022. All right. I want to go ahead and give a round of applause and welcome Zach Armour and Guido of the Dear Watchers podcast to our Patreon community. That's right, man. We got our homeboy, Zach. He went ahead and made the jump to the Patreon. And newest member, Guido, who I just met today. I recorded a podcast with the Dear Watchers podcast. They are a weekly comic book podcast hosted by Guido and Robert. And every week they explore a different multiverse from Marvel's What If, the DC Elseworlds, and far beyond. I told them that I thought their concept for a podcast was brilliant, and I wish I would have stolen that years ago. But Guido became a fucking Patreon subscriber right after we done recording. I didn't even bring up the Patreon.
That was your fee, though, right? All right, dude. You got to be level.
Yeah, that's funny.
This is about.
I'm like,
cut this out.
I'm like, you want me on a podcast for 2 hours? All right, I'm gonna need you to be a Patreon subscriber at the $5 share.
At least 6 month commitment.
It caught me by complete surprise.
Nice.
I didn't bring up the Patreon. I mean, they asked me about the short box and all that, but pleasant surprise that another comic podcast decided to support the show. And I told them, from one podcaster to another who understands what it means to put yourself out there and ask people for support and money. It meant a lot to me. So big shout outs to Zach and Guido for becoming the newest members of our Patreon. They're about to be living it up big time. That's right? They're going to fucking be able to vote on episodes. They get the shows early. They get bonus stuff. Like, all you short box normies, man, you guys got still waiting on you guys to see the light. With the sales pitch out of the way, Ed, let's go and rip the Band-Aid off so we can get cheery and celebrate some awesome comic creators.
Yes.
How do you want to kick us off this week?
Guess we can start with the passing of Kevin O'Neill, longtime Alan Moore collaborator. He is one of those guys. When I think of British comics, it's him, Pat Mills, Simon Bisley. Those are the three guys. And like I said, you can see they're kind of cross influences each other. And like I said, he's one of my favorites. I kind of got to, I guess, first became aware of him with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
which is probably one of my favorite Alan Moore titles, and jarring style, not very polarizing. I think it's like a Mike Mignola on a crack.
It's really scratchy and a lot like crosshatch.
Yeah, it's scratchy and it has that flatness, kind of like Mignola has, but there's so much detail. And like I said, his watercolors are really nice, but you can see the influence on, if you ever seen any of Simon Bisley's non-painted kind of interiors, like he has kind of that wild, scratchy style, and Pat Mills, so you can see that kind of circle of influence. And like I said, that's 2000 AD. Those are the three guys I think of, when I think of like, and that's kind of like my first real introduction into kind of that European comic book style before seeing the Mobius and people like that and the heavy metal stuff. But yeah, these guys are from England, are kind of like my first exposure to comics, non-US comics, or European comics, I should say.
Cool. Yeah, I'll admit that. I'm maybe putting myself on blast, but Kevin O'Neill, I'm not the most familiar with his work. I've read like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen like very early on.
Mm-hmm.
So his passing, like I had to do kind of my own. I had to catch up and do my homework. Being into comics this long, I think it's safe to say there's still like blind spots we all have, especially with like names like this, where it's like, no, you should probably know who Kevin O'Neill is and his impact to like the British, wave of comics and things. But
and that's the thing too. There's just so much to know about. It's like being a fan of anything like music. It's like you're gonna miss things, but as long as what's really cool now is like we have access to it. We can like do a Google search and see thousands of images, and we can have access to his books digitally or physically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a cool time to kind of go back and really learn about these people that we may have missed reading comics.
Not to get like deep into some rabbit hole, but it just got me thinking about like comic books and comic creators, and I guess really like just art in general, where one creator can have so many bodies of work, and even though like maybe they're no longer with us in the physical, like these bodies of work, like can stand the test of time, can be here for generations to come. And when you think of someone like Kevin O'Neill, who's in that upper echelon, like his work will be probably talked about, examined for years to come. And so in a way, like, it sucks that, they've, like Kevin O'Neill, Carlos Pacheco, and Kevin Conroy, like all passed this week, but the legacy and the bodies of work that they have left behind, it's like, are they really gone? They're never going to leave our memories or our thoughts.
Yeah. Like I said, you have at least, 40 something year career of work from 2000 AD to, he just finished, I think, a few pages unpublished that are going to be in like an Alan Moore book, like an 8-page story. So he was working till the end, and like I said, he has a very polarizing style. I'm not going to say it's not like Alex Ross where everyone's going to like it. 99% of the people are going to like it. It's very edgy, and it's so awkward and bizarre that it got like, the comic code said, we can't publish this Green Lantern story. It's like, what happened? Is there like a nipple or something in here? It's like, no, your drawings are just too weird. We don't want we don't want to print this shit out. It's too weird. And that happened with martial law too. When I think Epic Comics brought it over, that they had some issues just because his style was so crazy. And he's such a sweet looking old man.
Dude, and he's funny.
Yeah.
I was reading the New York Times wrote a obituary or a write-up on his passing and his his impact, and they gave like a short kind of quick crash course on his career. But at the end of it, I guess maybe they spoke to Alan Moore, or he called in or sent something in, and he was talking about like, even at the ripe age of 69, he was still very funny and comical. Mm-hmm. And I guess like he's one of the very few partnerships Alan Moore has had in comics where it hasn't turned sour. Like they were still friends to the very end. But he said something like the last time he talked to Kevin was on the phone, and he brought up how they have never fought or something like that. He was like, yeah, we've never really butted heads or fought. And Kevin's response was like, well, we've also never slept together or had sex. So those are two things. Those are two things I'm really appreciative of, which was a hell of a response.
And that, there's a whole Lost Girls. You can just look that up and see what that did too. That's a reference to.
I'm glad you brought up that Green Lantern rejection story, because that was, a story I hadn't heard before. For anyone that's unfamiliar that might be tuning in, Ed was referring to Tales of the Green Lantern Corps Annual Number 2. Kevin O'Neill did the interiors. Mm-hmm. And this was around the time, this book was released around the time the Comics Code was still prevalent, and DC and I think even Marvel were still sending their comics in to get approved. The book was rejected, to Ed's point, not because of maybe some grotesque subliminal sexual thing. It was just because his style was so out there.
Yeah, it's too weird. We can't print this, and that's kind of like, you can see his influence on a lot of, if anyone watches like cartoonist kayfabe, like the Outlaw comics, you can see that kind of really rough, scratchy style, and you can see his influence on a lot of those guys. But he's like a kind of like an outsider artist that made it, that's worked in mainstream. So like I said, he's one of my favorites because I like that kind of bizarre, very unique, very unusual, very imaginative character design. So he checks off a lot of boxes for me when I look at an artist.
I wasn't familiar with his editorial and industry side, business side. I guess he was an editor for 2000 AD, and one of the first things he did was successfully lobby to get credits added to the stories in 2000 AD.
How wild is that?
Dude, yeah,
put your name on it.
Even more wild to think, Dave Gibbons, I think, also was in that New York Times article, but was talking about how they would pay people or employ people to remove artist signatures. Mm-hmm. And their whole, I guess, the reasoning was, we don't want to, if we add credits, artist credits, it removes the mystique and mystery for the reader. What the fuck?
We got to pay them royalties and shit.
Backwards, math is that?
It will ruin the kid's imagination. This is supposed to just come magically appear out of nowhere.
Yeah. So that was so that's awesome that Kevin O'Neill was also fighting for artist rights.
Yeah.
For very basic artist rights.
2000 AD has a bad history of that, and it's so funny. It's could you imagine just getting your name on the book that you
have to lobby for it.
You gotta
we need an inside
That's
man.
not automatic. That's how far things have come,
Have you ever watched I would just put onto this, but there's a documentary about 2000 AD.
Not yet. No, I've seen it.
I didn't know
it's on the list, but I haven't got a chance to watch it.
It is now on the list for me for sure. Ed, you got anything else to say about Kevin O'Neill? Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox Store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
No, like I said, if you like kind of something non-traditional, like I said, it's weird that we have these two artists, which we'll get to, but they're like the polar opposites of comic book artists. But if, like I said, I can't recommend League of Extraordinary Gentlemen enough. It's one of my favorites, and I will go to Champion season and recommend some further, because that series actually continued past Jim Lee selling ABC and Wildstorm to DC. So that had the big falling out, because that was under the America's Best Comics imprint, which was a Wildstorm imprint.
Good stuff. All right, continuing on the celebration train is what I'm calling, because we're celebrating life and accomplishments. We were unfortunately also treated to the news of Carlos Pacheco passing away this week as well. He died at the age of 60 due to ALS, which is a neurodegenerative disease. He was a Spanish-born artist. He's worked in the comic industry as early as the 90s. I know my first conscious exposure to Carlos Pacheco's comic book artwork was a Bishop limited series that my dad gave me.
Nice.
It came out in 94. I think he gave it to me, as a kid. So like early 2000s.
I think that's his first series.
Oh, really?
I think so, yeah.
I will never forget these sweet hollow covers. I thought that shit was
God.
awesome.
My
dad was really into Bishop. He loved it. He gave it to me to read. I remember being like all bent up and shit, but the artwork was awesome. So that was my first conscious exposure. Was my dad giving me that book. But the guy ended up touching every notable character in DC and Marvel's catalog. Like you cannot think of any major notable character in those two companies that he probably hasn't worked on. Another iconic body of work of his that resonated with me and is honestly in like my top 5, maybe top 10 favorite comics of all time was Avengers Forever. It was written by Kurt Busiek. Carlos Pacheco does the artwork for all 12 issues, and it is amazing. It's like this very complex Kang the Conqueror time travel multiverse kind of story. There is literally like 1,000 characters and different versions of the Avengers in it, and it is a hell of a sprawling kind of big self-contained crossover event. But that made me an instant fan of Carlos Pacheco. The dude he just has style. He's in that camp of like, you look at his artwork and you're like, oh no, I recognize him by the style. I don't even need to, it doesn't have to be a recognizable character. I just know that's Carlos Pacheco's artwork.
Draws great, groups in action too.
Yeah.
He's a really good action artist.
Some of you eagle-eyed listeners might be familiar with the very iconic X-Men image that was kind of floating when he was on the X-Men in the 90s, but it's the one where it's Colossus lifting Wolverine up with one arm, ready for like a fastball special. It's like Nightcrawler and Storm and Marrow and Kitty Pryde are all surrounding them. I think that's one of his more iconic X-Men images that you've seen in like ads and promos and shirts and et cetera, et cetera. But he was also an accomplished, independent creator too, because he teamed up with Kurt Busiek on a title called Aerosmith, which was a fantasy series and actually earned him an Eisner Award. I'll be honest, I haven't read the series, but I'm excited to dive in.
I flipped through like a couple issues, and it's cool because it's basically like set during World War I, but with fantasy elements in it. So it's a pretty neat concept. Yeah. And Kurt Busiek, I mean, that guy can write.
Oh, no, for sure. Like one of my favorite writers of all time. And, it's one of my favorite artists. So I'm going to check that out. But that was in 2003. I mean, Carlos Pacheco, like I said, passed away at 60. He was still doing work up to I think he announced his retirement this September. Mm-hmm. And
the Damage Control cover.
Yeah, the last thing he did was a cover for a comic series called Damage Control. So, I mean, the dude was still working up to, his last breath, his last couple months. The way I would describe his artwork is it's fluid. Mm-hmm. I think it's soft, but it still maintains like a realistic style to it. There's just so much swag to his style. Like his characters just look cool. Like when you look at like his Superman Batman series, which is one of my favorites, called Absolute Power. He did a 5-issue series in Superman Batman in 2003. Where it's like this alternate reality where Superman and Batman are kind of like authoritarian figures. Just the way he draws them, they're always like in a cool stance, They exude a lot of confidence.
Yeah, it's a very clean style. Like I said, you couldn't pick two more opposite ends of the spectrum as far as comic book artists. His work is very clean, very like superheroic. It's like kind of if you ask somebody off the street, oh, this guy draws, this is what they think of when they think of comic arts. So, but yeah, he's got Kurt, he didn't fall into a lot of the weird stylistic trappings of the 90s. He survived all the weirdness that happened during then. That's kind of when he began his career. Yeah. So he's thrown right in the middle of probably the craziest time in comics, stylistically.
Yeah. Longevity is a word that comes to mind. As someone that started, early 90s, survived that period, got through 2000s, the rise of Image, was able to do like independent work and, still doing covers up to, just last month.
Yeah, he started off just drawing like pinups and posters for, places that translate Marvel comics. So he was basically doing, pinup stuff for the people who, the company that translated the Marvel stuff in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. And they took notice. Yeah. Which is, interesting career. Amazing artist. Definitely lost a very talented artist. I will say, sad part of it aside, what is always kind of interesting to see during these kind of like sad times is the amount of stories and respect that you see paid by other industry professionals. I think like my Twitter, I follow a bunch of comic writers and artists and other professionals on Twitter, but my feed has been nothing but great stories being shared all week. It's unfortunate, like the catalyst as to why they're sharing these stories, but just to see the outpouring of like respect being paid to like Carlos Pacheco and Kevin O'Neill, and to see like these big companies like New York Times covering this.
And what's cool, it's like I follow Bill Sienkiewicz, and he usually does a portrait. So he did.
That's
he did like,
Let me see
man,
what that looks like.
He did a portrait of Kevin Conroy, Carlos Pacheco, and Kevin O'Neill. So
he did one for Carlos Pacheco as well.
Yeah,
that's cool. All right, I'm gonna check that out. That must be a very tough tradition.
Yeah, because that's like colleagues too.
Yeah, well said. Feels weird saying last but not least, but the final gut punch is what I'll say that we got. I believe Friday, right? Friday.
I think so. Yeah, Thursday or Friday,
or late last week was the news that the Batman himself is what I'll say left the physical realm. Kevin Conroy died at age 66 after a battle with cancer. The news was announced by one of his colleagues, Diane Pershing, who voiced Poison Ivy. She had kind of broke the news, and from there it was like it was a hell of a time on Twitter. I could definitely tell this one. This one definitely hurt a lot of people. Now, because it wasn't just like diehard comic fans like ourselves that have a lot of respect for like Kevin O'Neill and Carlos Pacheco, but like TV, movie, actors, TV fans, writers. It was Kevin Conroy's passing was like a moment.
It's one of those things when it's in like in animation or video games, so many more people will hear his voice than would read a Batman comic.
Well said.
So this generation, everybody thinks of Batman. They think of his voice. If anyone else does his voice in any like game or cartoon, it's like, who's this guy? You know?
It's like, even though you've never met Kevin Conroy, his voice is like ingrained in a lot of people's heads. I know I've seen it, shared plenty of times already. Me and C were talking about it. I was talking about it with some other friends too, but it's like, to this day, I'll read a Batman comic book and that's his voice. That is my default voice is Kevin Conroy. It's never been like Christian Bale or
that's the worst one.
That's a good
Can you
point.
imagine like
That's a good point.
Listen, that in your head?
Yeah, that's very hard for you to say. Very good point. For good reason. You're right. Kevin Conroy, default Batman voice, I think safe to say for anyone that's a Batman fan. Mark Hamill shared some awesome words. He was a colleague and basically the other side of the coin when it came to the animated series. He voiced Joker. But Mark Hamill said he was one of my favorite people on the planet, and I loved him like a brother. He truly cared for the people around him. His decency shone through everything he did. Every time I saw him or spoke with him, my spirits were elevated, end quote. And I think that's just a sentiment that I've seen shared about Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, and it's such a funny way that how kind of life works out, because this guy's like a Juilliard trained, stage actor. And he basically, I was reading an interview where he just went on this just on a hunch, just like, I'll go try it out, why not? And didn't read Batman comics, just knew the Adam West Batman and got the gig. And now that's kind of defined his career.
Wow. It's crazy to hear those stories of just like absolute kind of like caution to the wind, kind of like,
like, why not? What the hell?
Why not?
What do I got to lose?
And then you end up becoming the fucking definitive Batman for everyone in the entire world.
Like a 30-year career? What?
Dude, 1992 is when he started voicing Batman. That's insane. And I was looking at his credits, and it's like, if there's any word, if Batman is in the title of anything, his name's kind of attached. Some of the credits include, of course, the new Batman Adventures, Batman Beyond, Static Shock, Justice League Unlimited, Batman the Brave and the Bold, Tales of Metropolis, so on, and even some of the short, animated films.
He's the voice in the Arkham Knight games too, right? Is he, or is it someone else?
I'd have to double check, but I think he is. I think it's safe to say. I'm pretty sure it is. But Justice League versus the Fatal Five, and even Scooby-Doo in the Guess Who. Yeah, I think the only good news that I can kind of remotely grasp and upside to this is, one, the fact that everyone is sharing their favorite memories of him. Two, everyone is sharing recommending and sharing their favorite Batman episodes. So that's given me a reason to dive back into the series. But also, his final Batman credit is listed on IMDb as the upcoming TV series Batman Caped Crusader, which is currently being filmed. That was the show that's got Paul Dini.
Oh, that's right.
Ed Brubaker is involved, and some other names as well. I for some reason I thought that fell through, but I guess it's still being filmed.
I remember talking about that was a while ago.
Yeah. He said Kevin Conroy apparently voices Thomas Wayne in the show, and it's slated for a 2023 premiere. I'm looking forward to that, to say the very least.
Thinking about my favorite line or favorite episode, it's my favorite thing about is just when he changes from Bruce Wayne to Batman.
Oh man,
the shift in voice and tone. It's that's so brilliant. To something at least I never thought of, with alter egos. How do they change their voice? Superman still sound like Clark Kent. Do they modulate their voice in a way? Yeah, and it's just so perfect.
It's as impactful to me as watching Christopher Reeves do the change from Superman to Clark Kent on screen. Watching his mannerisms. Mm-hmm. And I'm not a voice actor or an actor at all, so I can't really speak to the difficulties of both. But I would imagine it's maybe a more unique challenge to do that with just your voice. You can't rely on body
characters, motion. But they have to be the same character at the same time. It's crazy.
Voice. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we lost a hell of a talent. All right, moving on to maybe some lighter news, some good news, especially for fans of the DC universe, movies, and TV. A few weeks, maybe a week or two old on this announcement, but I thought I'd spotlight it. And that is that James Gunn and movie producer Peter Safran, who is of Annabelle, The Nun, and Aquaman fame. I think he was a movie producer on those films, among others, are sharing CEO duties of DC Studios. Like I said, that was announced maybe a week or two ago. To much fanfare. I mean, a lot of positive reception to it. I think it came shortly after the premiere of the Black Adam movie. Yeah. So say what you will about that timing. I don't know if it was a former CEO, because I think this is a brand new role for the companies that have a CEO.
And it's a
DC
split
Studios.
CEO. Yeah. One, I think James Gunn is handling the creative side, and the other guy, as he's doing the more business production side of things. So makes sense.
So and I guess it's a 4-year kind of contract at first. Gunn is in charge of the creative side of the DC Studios, and Safran, like you said, will handle the business side. Gunn will still direct films, which I think is the cherry on top. Yeah. It's not only is he overseeing it from a Kevin Feige type role, but he's also getting his hands dirty. With this news, I think there's a lot of hopeful DCU fans, and there was some hashtags going around Save Legends of Tomorrow, that CW show, as well as we see this hashtag resurface a few times, but release the Ayers cut of Suicide Squad. His response was, which I think is cool, that James Gunn has this thing of being rather active and vocal on social media. I think that's pretty cool that he's able to kind of be with the times, and he's reachable, I guess. Yeah. But he responded to the hashtags and people wanting that, and basically saying I really appreciate it. We hear you guys, and our goal. He says that he wanted everyone to know that his team and the regime will be focusing on the stories going forward, as well as attempting to tell the biggest stories ever told across multiple films, TV, and animated projects, which was kind of a nice way of saying, yo, look, them dreams ain't happening. We focusing on the next
My Suicide chapter. Squad's the only one that matters, and you can just let that die. That ain't happening. Yeah, it's very diplomatic. Yeah. But, it's kind of a very nice no. You're a nice guy. We could still be friends, though, right?
I'll share this other quote he has. As the new and first ever, so like I said, I guess a brand new role they made for Gunn and Safran. As the new and first ever CEOs of DC Studios, Peter and I think it's important that we acknowledge you, the fans, and let you know we hear from you. We hear your different desires for the pathway towards for DC. Which, let's be real, that is something that I don't think DC fans have felt these past couple of years. They've been heard or listened to. Maybe the Snyder Cut is an exemption to that, but this is a good look, man. James Gunn to me is someone that has a vision that is able to execute He looks like that's someone that respects the source material, that finds ways to like really focus on character development.
He's got the
stories.
track record for his Guardians movies, and he still's got another one coming out.
He is someone that's able to bounce between both camps, and no one gives a fuck. They're like, "Nah, we want some of that gun magic over here. We'll share. Like, he is the one thing that DC and Marvel are willing to share. They're like, "Nah, you get a little bit of that too." Ed, my question for you on this topic is, what's a DC property that you want to see Gunn and his team and this new regime tackle and bring into the DCU?
I would kind of like to see. Let me try to think what the name of it is. I wouldn't mind seeing like some more offbeat, off the wall type characters, which I think is his specialty. Mm-hmm. Like maybe like something like the Outsiders or like the Authority, something different, something that's not Batman. Like I say all the time, let's chill on Batman for a minute. I don't know, maybe New Gods. So yeah, anything Kirby DC related, I'm down for. And I think they're strange enough and he can handle those type of quirky characters like he has a track record of. I'm
surprised you haven't said Lobo yet.
Ooh, Lobo.
Because Jason Momoa was on was it Jimmy Fallon, I think, or one of these late night shows, and they asked him about James Gunn, and he was like pretty excited about maybe. I guess he brought up the idea of like playing Lobo, which I think Jason Momoa would play a pretty cool Lobo.
Lobo and I guess he could do double duty.
I mean, he kind of talks like Lobo already. He kind of has like that inflection in that.
Needs
voice.
to work out more though, and needs to get that white. It'll probably be a CGI character, but yeah, Lobo. I don't know how I missed that, but yeah, anything different, anything kind of new, and like it's kind of get away from even from the JLA properties for a while. Just kind of do some new, interesting things with characters that deserve more, recognition, mainstream recognition.
I'm trying to think of the name of that. What was it? Villains United from DC Comics. I'm trying to think where it had like Catman. Yeah, Villains United. Okay. Do you remember the series? It was like 2005 series. It had like, it was just focused on a supervillain team. The Secret Six is what it's called.
Secret Six. Okay. Yeah. I
would love to see him do the Secret Six, which is a 2005 story by, oh man, I'm having such a brain. Oh, Gail Simone and Dale Eaglesham did the artwork, and it focused on villains like Catman, Ragdoll was in it, like a bunch of just like B-list kind of C-list like character. Yeah, Deadshot, Catman, Ragdoll, Black Alice, Amanda Waller. It was basically like Suicide Squad.
Black Alice. Oh man,
I just want to see him do like villains, and especially with his knack for like violence. After watching Suicide Squad, I think he would also probably do a really good direct a really good Injustice movie too, based on like the video game story, and bring that to life. I think he would excel at something. I think he'd excel at something like violent, with a little dash of raunchy, because he could really make it all about the characters, like he did on Suicide Squad. Okay. If that's anything to run with.
Yeah, and then like I said, that's kind of like about the Authority, because it's kind of like a raunchier group. Yeah, or maybe even he can convince Guillermo del Toro to go back and do that Justice League Dark movie.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, I guess on the topic of movies and cinematic adaptations of comic books, your topic that you brought to the table, it kind of exemplifies that.
Okay, AMC, they announced this, I think, originally in March, saying they're getting to the comic book publishing business. Because I guess, their biggest thing has been The Walking Dead, so I guess they're wanting to keep more of that stuff in-house.
Walking Dead immediately came to mind. I was like, nah, AMC has way more properties than just Walking Dead. So I went on their website, and Preacher was among there. Of course, like Better Call Saul. I mean, Breaking Bad, I think, was also AMC one. Comic Book Men.
Yeah.
But there was so many Walking Dead variants. I did not know there was this many spin-off shows. There's like a one about like the Navy, like a Navy, like underwater Walking Dead. Yeah, it was so many of them.
Walking Dead goes to Hawaii. It's like the police academy.
Basically, it was a lot of Walking Dead spin-off shows I had no idea existed.
Zombies in Paradise, Walking Dead. Yeah, they released the press statement, and like I said, when they did it in March, it was just like they just blurted a few names but no real artists or any creative themes. They said, oh yeah, we got Stephen King doing something maybe. And it was just very like, all right, whatever. But
someone text Stephen King. Text Stephen.
Someone tweet him. They had a press release saying, AMC Network's publishing adds a new comic series to its fan-focused original titles. Kelly Sue DeConnick and Bill Sienkiewicz. They're doing a title called Parisian White. And basically they're give a little bit of a premise of the book, which I read it 8 or 9 times, still no idea what this is about. About paint and like paint is poison and weapons, and seems very
it
artsy.
Almost sounded super artsy.
It was like, oh
super
boy,
artsy.
This is going to be pretty to look at.
It was almost read like paint is almost like in human form or like some shit like that. Like it actually is
like paint is taken from this parasite in South America. Like, what? All right.
Very heady concept.
It'll look nice. And Kelly Sue DeConnick has, she's a good writer. We'll see. Those are 2 big names in the comic book field to get. And then they mentioned a couple other titles. They had like Kirk Hammett is writing a book for Metallica. All right. It seems very random.
Dude, someone just went through the Rolodex. You can imagine like an exec at AMC's got like a super tight
He's got
Rolodex.
Metallica's phone number. You want to do a comic? Who wants to do a comic? Kurt, I'm looking at you, buddy.
Imagine an AMC exec sending a group chat to like all his like famous friends. Anyone want to do a comic in here? Don't worry if you've done one before.
Yeah, the title's called Knights of Lono, and it's a... Oh, I don't know. I didn't write it down. But there's another Obulette, and Tula Latte from Wicked and Divine is attached to that, and Brendan Fletcher, who's a New York Best Times bestseller and a comic book writer as well. So they're getting some names, and it's just interesting that, they are going in on the publishing game too, rather than like what they've done before was getting the licenses like for Preacher and for Walking Dead and all its spin-offs. So it's interesting that it's like, okay, let's kind of keep this in-house. Let's develop our own IPs.
That makes sense when you consider like what IPs they really, I mean, we made fun of it at the beginning, but they have way more than just Walking Dead. So Ed, my question to you is, of the many AMC properties, like what is one that you think would make sense as a comic book outside of like Walking Dead?
Yeah, well, if we're looking at the AMC umbrella, like you got to include like they have the BBC streaming, and they have Shudder, too. So you have all this properties and all these original shows that you can do. They just are starting to do Anne Rice, like an Interview with the Vampire series. So there's a whole line of books with a fan base that you could make comic adaptations for. There's like, there's a series that looked interesting called Dark Winds. It's like a Western kind of noir. It reminded me of Scalp just by reading the premise of it. That could be an interesting book. So they have, or, like I said, they have the Creepshow series on Shudder. They can bring that as a comic book. They even have like an anime division, Sentai, I think they just sell like Blu-rays, DVDs, and things like that. But they have even access to Asian things, Japanese, manga. They can do like manga or like even do like a show and jump. If they want to do like a big thing of like a sampler of like, oh, you like this? Well, we have the DVD. It's all about selling this other stuff. So
good point.
So they got a lot of more stuff than I realized under the AMC umbrella.
I wouldn't be opposed to a Breaking Bad comic book or a Better Call Saul kind of comic book. In the same vein as like Chicken Devil that came out through Chicken Devil that came out through Aftershock Clan, like done in that same vein, because I felt like Chicken Devil was basically like kind of Breaking Badish. So I think that would be cool. And if they don't get Kevin Smith to do a comic book under this publishing arm, because he's got Comic Book Men on AMC. I think they'd be dropping the ball if they don't get Kevin Smith to do something interesting. And I mean, look, if this Rolodex that we're joking about is as half as thick as we think it is, some interesting things could definitely come out of it. So we'll see what comes out of that. I think the most immediate thing we could look forward to outside of what they currently have for offerings, which is the Art of AMC's The Walking Dead Universe Coffee Table book, which I guess like was a big factor in them going further with this publishing arm because it was so successful.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There was also Shudder's Creepshow From Script to Scream. That came out through Titan Books, or in partnership with Titan Books. And then Miss Fisher's First Mysteries is a new graphic novel.
I'm not sure if it's going to be like, okay, we're AMC Comics, but Image is our publisher. Like an established infrastructure that they don't have to like, okay, we got to, set up all these people, set up all these, offices and positions, but we have these companies that we've been working with, and they can be our infrastructure. We'll just put their name really small in the credits and then put the AMC logo really big,
sense. So those series by Kirk Hammett, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Bill Sienkiewicz, all of them, those series launch later next year. And they're doing like a special promo edition comic that'll debut at San Diego Comic-Con next year, which I imagine will probably run for a pretty penny.
Yeah, and it's crazy because so we just had Whatnot just jump on and they've been killing it. So that could be a reason. It's like, and these guys are selling 500,000 comics.
And AMC's like, bitch, we got motherfucking Walking Dead. We about to milk that even more. Robert Kirkman's like hooked up to like some contraction, like, please, for the love of God. Nah, Robert Kirkman's probably like, no, please, give me another M in
There's
my
another
bank
bag
account.
of money for you.
Good stuff.
Like a $sign drawn on it. Here you go.
All right, listeners, that is the news that we're going to highlight today. All right, we wanted to celebrate the careers of some of the most respected legends and artists in the comic book and pop culture world. So once again, we want to share our condolences to the family, friends, and fans of Kevin O'Neill, Carlos Pacheco, and Kevin Conroy. Obviously, we couldn't get to all of the news and headlines that came out this week. We're only a two-man team today, all right? And we got a limit, too, a time limit, too. So if you feel like there was any news or headlines that came out that are worthy of getting a spotlight, why don't you do us the favor and tell us about it, right? Feel free to write in and let us know if there's any headlines or major news that we missed. In the meantime, let's now move on to our next segment and talk about the best new and upcoming comic books hitting a shop near you. Let's grab a fistful of comics.
You can either have a mouthful of tea or a fistful of comics.
Fistful of Comics is the part of the show dedicated to all you comic-curious newbies and loyal Wednesday warriors who are looking for good starting points and new stories to explore in the wide world of comics. And who better to help us point you in the right direction than the man who runs Jacksonville's premier comic shop, Ben Kingsbury, the owner of Gotham City Limit. So let's go and get a cool little music bed going, and let's see what's on the agenda today. All right, his first pick is an otherworldly tribute book coming out through DC Comics, which will pay respect to one of the most notable architects of its distinguished competitors, Stan Lee. Here's Ben to tell you all about it.
Hello, Shortbox listeners and friends, wherever you may be listening from and however you may be listening. This is our first FOC pick of the week, and listen up carefully because Tales from Earth 6, a celebration of Stan Lee #1, is brought to you by DC Comics. Over 20 years ago, Stan Lee reimagined the DC Universe, and to celebrate the icon's 100th birthday, dive into 10 new adventures featuring a criminal turned nocturnal warrior, a champion from the Brazilian Amazon, an intergalactic lawman, and more. Plus, a variant cover E will feature Stan's reimagined Sandman with art by my personal favorite, Kelly Jones. Think Batman Nightfall. Let's celebrate the man, the myth, and the legend the right way.
Once again, that was called Tales from Earth 6. That'll be hitting shops December 27th. That Kelly Jones cover is super sick. I didn't know that Stan Lee reimagined.
Oh, you didn't? You don't remember these?
I remember these. I didn't know he did a
Sandman?
A Sandman one.
Yeah, that one I didn't. I didn't read any of them, so yeah, that's cool though.
Wow, his 100th birthday.
This is cool though. This is pretty neat.
All right, next up on Ben's list, speaking of alternate versions of classic Marvel characters, this next book is all about the Hulk, but in a different skin tone. Take it away, Ben.
Legend Peter David returns to Joe Fixit. Who and what is Joe Fixit? Think the strongest one there is. However, gone are ripped up shorts of years past. This Hulk prefers the slick swab of a striped suit. Really all you need to know is Hulk traded in his monster card for a mobster one instead. Oh, and Kingpin and Spidey? Hulk smash is in there somewhere.
That's awesome. I love Mr. Fix-It.
Yeah, his choice in suits is. I love the shoe game too. Like bowler shoes and shit like that.
Hulk in a 3-piece pinstripe suit
with the top hat too to match. Come on now.
So I remember reading with him, and he was actually working as like a bouncer in a casino.
And the best part about this series, this Joe Fix-It series, which issue 1 is hitting shops January 4th. We're already talking about the new year already, so that'll be one of the first new comic books to hit shops on in 2023. Art by Yildiray Cinar. I would say, I'm never sure if I'm saying that name right, but his art is awesome. Kind of reminds me of Carlos Pacheco. I like the softness of it, but the realism. All right, last but not least, Ben has decided to keep it in the Marvel universe with his next pick. This last one will put you on a hex regardless of what universe you call home.
And finally, we come to a new chapter in my favorite witch, Scarlet Witch. This might sound crazy. However, I'm not a huge fan of Wanda, per se. However, I can't get enough of her personality unleashed as the Scarlet Witch. Anyone who can humble Doctor Doom has my attention, and trust me when I say you need to check out Ivan Tao's variant cover. Well, another week has come and gone, and I'm still Ben K representing Gotham City Limit. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility, and always take it to the limit.
Hell yeah. Ben always picks like the best variant covers. He's got a good eye for those. All right, Ed, of the 3 recommendations that Ben shared with us today, which one are you most interested in? Which one's going to get put on your pull list?
I guess, even though I didn't read it the first time around, I love multiverse stuff, so I got to go with the Tales from Earth 6, just because that idea and then just the people involved in it. I think bang for your buck, that's a pretty awesome title to get.
I'm gonna go ahead and co-champion that with you too. I think out of all the picks, this one definitely piques my interest because I think I might have read 1 or 2 of the Stan Lee reimagined the DC universe, the original series.
They're just all one shots, I think. Right?
Yeah, all one shots. So short and sweet, and it sounds like this probably has all of them put together, or maybe like a retelling, but 96 pages, $10 book. We got a full stacked lineup of creators. You got Mark Waid, Becky Cloonan. You've also got Michael Conrad. You got Lee Weeks, Jerry Ordway. Jim Chung is doing art on here. Dan Panosyan, Christian Ward, Kyle Holtz. I mean, yeah, this is going to be tight. I'm also going to go co-champion and probably pick up this Tales from Earth 6. And it'll be like the last book of this year. So that'll be a nice way to end the year and remember Stan Lee in a positive way. All right, well, that's the list, listeners. If any of those pique your interest, make sure you hit up your comic shop. Make sure you get your pre-orders in. Big shout out to Ben for always providing some top-notch reading recommendations. Remember, even if you don't live in Jax, you could still take it to the limit by shopping the Gotham City Limit online store for comics and exclusive shop variants. There is a link in this episode's show notes if you're interested in checking it out. Now, next up, we got some emails and fan letters to get to before sharing our favorite entertainment options with you. But that's going to take place after we take a quick music break, all right? I want to stretch our legs. I want to check on the disappointing Jags score against these Chiefs.
Oh, no.
So let's go and play some music from our guy, Mecha the Marvelous. This is a new instrumental he sent me called Silvers, which samples the iconic soul group of the same name. Enjoy the music, and I promise we'll be right back. Yo. Once again, the music you just heard was by beatmaker and rapper extraordinaire Mecha the Marvelous. If you like what you heard, go listen to more of his music on Spotify and Apple Music. There will be links to all of that in this episode's show notes. We got some fan letters to read, right? We got some fan mail. Our listeners woke up. They were like, all right, we heard you bitching about it. We heard you crying for some attention.
Wow.
That's aggressive. I said the same thing too. I was like, geez, guys, I just wanted some interaction. All right, now we got some letters in from the listeners and from some of our favorite listeners too, man. Some good friends of the show. First up, our first letter comes from our pal Nick Wagner, the head honcho of Black Hive Tattoo. His letter, he titles it Namor Episode Question. And he writes, "Hey guys, Nick Old Man Wagner here. Great episode as usual, but I wanted to sound off to your question this episode. Who is your favorite aquatic comic character?" That is the question I asked in last episode as a prompt for everyone to write in this episode. He continues, Nick's favorite aquatic comic character is Abe Sapien. He writes, "Okay, I'm biased because of my love for Hellboy." No surprise there. "But the slow unfolding of his character abilities and backstory was such a cool thing to watch over the first 10 to 15 years that Mignola was doing Hellboy. Full disclosure, I stopped following the different peripheral series once it got so many side titles that I thought I was reading a Marvel or DC title.
Oh.
But that first run of side titles, Abe Sapien, Lobster Johnson, BPRD, insert various years here, was really cool. One thing I always wondered, though, did they ever explain the aliens that looked a lot like Abe in that single page of Seed of Destruction Chapter 4? And that was his email. Big shout out to Nick for that email. That last part of his email about the aliens that look like Abe from Seed of Destruction piqued my interest. I did a little digging. Could not answer the question of why those aliens look like Abe, look so similar to Abe. Well, what I did learn is that, one, there is truly a wiki for every single piece of property, comic, fandom in the world.
It's probably a Hellboy wiki.
There was.
Yeah.
I found, so I typed in Alien Hellboy Seed of Destruction. And it gave me a Hellboy wiki article about these aliens. They're just called Alien. Then that pulled up another article about some announcement that was made in 2015, I think, about a series called Hellboy the Visitor, or just The Visitor, that explores the origin of one of the aliens. And his whole role was like he was sent to Earth to kill Hellboy, but he decides not to because he notices like the humans kind of embrace him, et cetera, et cetera. But they never explain like why they look like Abe, to Nick's point. But I think Abe Sapien is a great pick for favorite aquatic comic character. That's a super solid pick. Not surprising at all coming from Nick, but awesome pick. All right, next up, we got another email, and it's from our guy T-Mix. All right, he woke up from his 2-week slumber and decided to get back to writing us regular weekly emails, starting with this one. All right, this one is titled, what did he title this email? He titled this email appropriately, all right, considering what we just talked about. I am vengeance. All right, his email goes, what up, Shortbox? Sorry I didn't write in last week. I went down to the motherland of El Salvador for a week, so I missed out. You know what, T?
Nice.
You're forgiven. We can forgive that, right, Ed?
Mm-hmm.
All right, he continues. Going back to El Salvador has me kind of hyped for Namor. Has me kind of hyped for Namor having a Mesoamerican background using Aztec mythology. Sadly, I couldn't see it this weekend, so I'll have to wait. T, it is well worth the wait. Continuing on, he writes, I'm sure y'all heard, but we lost another legend this past week with the passing of Kevin Conroy. Most people pick between Keaton or Bale as their favorite Batman, but for me, it's always going to be Kevin. Batman the Animated Series, New Adventures of Batman and Robin, Justice League Unlimited, pretty much cemented Conroy as Batman. Not to mention he starred in the best Batman movie, Mask of the Phantasm. I'm reading Chip Zdarsky's current Batman, and I basically hear Conroy. He will be greatly missed. Now for the prompt. My favorite underwater character. Okay, from comic books, I'm going with Caldurum from Young Justice. Dude's a badass with a strong sense of honor. Non-comic books, I'm going with Sebastian the Crab. Dude is dripping with swag and has some of the best
Little Mermaid?
Disney songs. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Under the Sea still hits. T, I could not fucking agree more. I love T-Mix, man. When he writes that, it's funny.
Sebastian.
All right, one champion today. I recently read DC Pride #1, Finding Batman, written by Kevin Conroy, and it gives an insight into his personal struggles. I highly recommend it. Hasta la próxima, mis amigos. T-Mix. P.S. I love that Ashley wants to watch the Jags. Duval. Damn. T-Mix, I mean, I'm sorry, man. I love Nick. That was an awesome pick. They chose Abe Sapien, but I think T-Mix wins
Sebastian the Crab?
Sebastian the Crab, I mean, from left field, man. And here's the thing. Was any of that false? I mean, Sebastian the Crab, he's got some great songs. He's got a good set of pipes.
Maybe in some cream cheese wontons. He's nice. I don't need him. But it's a funny pick, though. It's a fun pick.
That's good stuff. All right. Like I promised last week, I said whoever wrote in, the best email or the email that entertained us the most would get to pick between two comic books. T, I believe you already have this Green Lantern variant that I was offering. So if you want the Vanish #1 Gotham City Limit exclusive, let me know. Shoot me an email and I'll get your address and send that out to you. Just because, we love Nick so much and I love this pick. Nick, I'm going to send you something different, man. I'm going to send you one of these short box patches that we just got made, all right? They're going to go up in the store here soon, but Nick, I'm going to send you one for free, buddy. Thanks for that email. Once again, big shout-outs to T-Mix and Nick Wagner for the email. I want all of our listeners to know that we love when you guys chime in, when you guys send us a champion, when you guys send us an email, especially when you send one to just make us laugh, all right? If you got one talking shit about us, go ahead and keep that or just throw that one away, all right? We don't want no negativity here. Send us a funny email. I guess I should give another prompt. I kind of like this aquatic one. Hey, let's think. You know what? How about we turn the tables on the listeners, all right? Out of all of the AMC properties, what is a AMC property that you would love to see transformed into a comic book? And then I also want you to give us an elevator pitch. So a 1 to 2 sentence elevator pitch for said property becoming a comic book, all right?
Everything under the AMC umbrella
Everything.
on the table?
Let's go ahead and just have some fun with it.
Nice.
Let's open it up. I think we picked some good ones. I want to see if someone could pick a curveball one, right? No Walking Dead, no Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad or any of the ones me and Ed picked. Let's go. Let's be creative. And of course, I'll offer up some comic books or short box merch. So send us an email at theshortboxjacks@gmail.com, or you can DM your answer on Twitter or Instagram at shortboxjacks, JAX. You got your marching orders. So while you do that, I think it's a perfect time to get into the last topic for today and tell you all about the best entertainment options personally selected by us that we guarantee are worthy of your time and attention. It's time for Champion Season.
It's time for Champion Season.
Champion Season is the part of the show where we highlight worthwhile entertainment options like movies, TV series, books, video games, and anything else we'd personally recommend to our friends that are looking for something new to dive into. That might be you, all right? Maybe you're looking for something new to watch or read or whatever it may be. This is the segment for you. Ed, how about you do us the honors? Go first. What are you champion today?
Oh, man, I got a few. So, like I said, to kind of piggyback off our Kevin O'Neill tribute, like I was mentioning earlier, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen did continue through Top Shelf Comics, but there is a trilogy that I'm just starting to read. It's the Nemo trilogy. Basically, it is Captain Nemo's daughter. It spans over 75 years, and it's in 3 books like this, 3 hardcover books. It's like
this
72
cover
pages.
Is rad. Dude, I cannot nail down Kevin O'Neill's style. This
I'm
looks
telling you,
so
it's
much
like-
different than
yeah.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah, so it's a really cool continuation of this universe. And of course, I got the first 2, and they just came out with a 3 thing with a slipcase, which I'm going to have to rebuy the first 2 again. The first one is Nemo Heart of Ice. So basically this one, and they still use like some literary characters. This one goes into like the H.P. Lovecraft, kind of the mouth of madness. So it has like the H.P. Lovecraft tie-in with this one. The next one is Rose of Berlin, which I haven't read yet, but it's just kind of the Nazi story. She's fighting Nazis in that one. So basically it's her life. Basically Captain Nemo is passed, and it's basically his daughter's life taking over the Nautilus and her adventure. So it's really cool, kind of a generational, like you get to see the next chapter. And there's like chapters in between this. There's the Black Dossier with League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I think 1910. So there's actually several books that I didn't even know about because once it dropped off of when ABC got sold, and Jim Lee basically sold all his company to DC. I just kind of lost track of it. But there's been several other chapters to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So if you did like that, I'd recommend checking them out. I think through the US, it's through Top Shelf Publishing, and they're usually not traditional comics. They're done kind of like in this kind of hardcover format. So
for $10, this is a great steal.
Yeah, and like I said, it's really cool. Like I said, it's trying to figure out who these characters are and finding out there are some obscure literary characters and see who these people, what these references are. So, like I said, if you enjoy that world, definitely check out the Nemo trilogy. Another one is a stop motion movie that just came out with Key and Peele. It's called Wendell and Wild. It's and it is done by Henry Selick. So he's the guy that's done Coraline, Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach. So this is something that was started in, I think, 2015, and I think it's been complete, but it's just now coming out on Netflix. I'm not sure the history of it, but if you enjoy traditional kind of stop motion animation with some green screen, it's really cool character designs. If you like that look, if you like that kind of look of the Nightmare Before Christmas, things like that, it's a really cool lead character. He's kind of this Afro-punk kid who's a hell maiden, I think, and she summons the two demons, which are Key and Peele. And basically they end up raising the dead for this kind of corrupt property managers who want to build this private prison. It's pretty wild. Wendell and Wild. It's really fun.
This looks so rad.
It's really cool. It's like when the soundtrack comes up, it is like Fishbone and like the specials, the Germs, X-Ray Specs. So a really cool soundtrack and a really cool lead character that you don't really see. You know, that kind of Afro-punk aesthetic, the green Afro puff hair and then like the punk rock look. So really cool designs. If you, just from a technical standpoint, they do some really, just if you know how much work goes into doing this, they do like 360 camera around the characters, which had to be a nightmare to actually do, but really fun. It's like a couple hours, maybe hour and 40 minutes. But I only found out about it because I saw a little featurette on YouTube. I had no idea this was coming out. And I figure with, Key and Peele kind of I won't say reuniting, but, them back together doing a project they would have like a bigger rollout. But that's just so much stuff coming out. It's hard to keep up with. And I guess finally, did you want to do the double?
If you champion Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I will chime in. I'm just gonna let you know. Life, and Drew recorded after we watched the movie, immediately after we watched the movie. So I have.
You said your piece.
I have said my piece. I'll chime in. No, I'll jump in because as you can see, I was briefly going to mention it. So
I've got two champ. I just saw it yesterday. Wakanda Forever. Is it perfect movie? No. There's some things I can nitpick about it, but the circumstances in which this movie was made, I think Ryan Coogler did as good a job as you can do, if not better. Mm-hmm. Introducing new characters, Riri Williams, and of course Namor, which that guy's awesome. I love him.
Oh man, Tenoch Huerta. Yeah. I know he's a new man crush of mine.
I like that kind of new origin story, and
dude, it worked out so well.
It's good.
I thought it was fresh. I thought it was fresh, made sense, didn't feel out of place.
Yeah, it's cool. The whole aesthetic of the underwater thing looked really awesome. Like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of Riri Williams and the Ironheart armor, but I understand she's in it. She's gonna have a series, so there's things that you have to do to kind of in this big Marvel picture.
To me, that was the one part that was like,
and it's nothing against her. I thought she did fine, but I think, like we were saying earlier, she didn't really need to be in there. They could have put
if you subtracted her, it wouldn't have been a major difference in the story and plot.
Yeah.
But I mean, definitely nothing against it.
But it's a beautiful movie. Like the fight scenes were really cool. And M'Baku is my favorite.
Man.
And it's cool to see him, the wisdom he's gained through this whole ordeal. He's not just as brash as he was. He's the voice of reason. He's the mentor to to Shuri.
I will also highlight the wisdom he gains after his first scuffle with Namor.
Oh my God.
Was life changing. It was hella life changing for him. I'll leave it at that.
Dude, it's like, oh man, they didn't kill him, did he? It's like there's enough people dying in this.
I was looking up just reviews, and I'd seen a headline for one that I thought encapsulated the movie perfectly. It called it a meditation on grief.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a perfect, and I'm sure like this week's events and headlines and the people that we lost had a lot to play in it, but a meditation on grief, it describes it perfectly. it is definitely a long movie to be experiencing that much type of emotions and seeing that unfold on screen, especially like in a public setting. You know?
That's why I go early. Okay, there's that fat guy crying in the corner.
I was telling Blythe, this movie is going to be really good to rewatch, like in the privacy of your home to experience that. But to your
especially
point,
that post-credit scene.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. I was like, guys, come on.
I know, man.
I just got done. I can't cry anymore.
That's the thing too, and that was one of the things I was curious to see how they were going to handle it. They kind of tackle it right away, and it is that razor sharp line of, tribute and exploitation, which is hard because I've been reading some other reviews where I think you can't win. This is a situation you cannot win. Chadwick was the perfect Black Panther. That's the perfect cast, and he was. Beyond that, he's a great actor, a great human being from all accounts. So and in a world where people come back to life and, where that is not a big issue with comics, it was that ceremony was just beautiful. It's like,
damn, that's really well said, Ed. They were definitely walking a razor thin tightrope. And there was times where, they weren't perfectly walking it. They swayed sometimes one side to the other. But it was a valiant attempt. You're like,
and it's like
I couldn't have done it.
It's a no-win situation, because the people who were, criticizing that, if they recast them, they would bitch about why'd you use Chadwick, So the people, you can't satisfy everybody, and I think to keep this part of the MCU going, I think he did a killer job. Like I said, it's a beautiful movie. It's maybe a little long, but that's kind of what you come to expect now. It's just part of the deal. But it's a beautiful film. I enjoyed it, and my nitpicking is kind of after watching it. But watching it, I loved it.
Well said. Like I said, if you want to hear me, Drew, and Blythe gush about it immediately after watching it and sharing like our very fresh perspective, that Black Panther review is on our Patreon. One last thing I will say about it, and this is kind of a callback to last week's episode where we talked about the most horrific version of Namor ever written. I was pleasantly surprised that they applied some horror element to Namor in the movie.
The attack on the base.
The opening attack, the first time we see Namor on screen, had some horror elements to it. And I was like, oh shit. Once again, the short box is never too far away when it comes to our book clubs and pre-movie episodes. Yeah. So, well said. So Black Panther Wakanda Forever, obviously a champion of mine. I won't get into details other than, Ed, I think what you shared was excellent. My other champion is the DC Infinite Ultra subscription tier that was rolled out a few weeks ago. It was announced maybe a month ago, I think at New York Comic Con. DC announced, hey, our current digital comic platform, DC Infinite, we're introducing a new tier called DC Infinite Ultra. The big appeal of it was that it would offer fans and subscribers new comic books that hit the shelves 30 days after print release. So if a book came out, today, 30 days later, it would find its way on the app. They also announced that they were expanding the comics library. They were going to add like new member benefits. They expanded the Vertigo and Black Label and DC Collected Edition catalog. They were going to expand just the regular comic library from 27,000 to 32,000. And just like a whole bunch of other stuff for that Ultra. Now, granted, all of that came with a price tag. I think prior to upgrading my service, I was paying $75 a year for the DC Infinite app. The Ultra is like $100 a year. But you get all of this stuff. And like I said, the big appeal was that you would just have to wait 30 days after a comic hit shelves for it to come out on the app.
Oh, that's not
bad. Yeah, not bad at all.
It's about time I get to reading stuff I buy anyway.
Exactly. By the time I finish my stack of new books, I'm a month late anyways, if that. So yeah, I signed up for it because I was like, I kind of want to see, what ends up on here. And, a lot of people will cry about like, well, man, this just means that, they're coming after local comic shops. Like, think about the lost revenue. And, I think there's some truth to that. But it hasn't stopped me from going to the shop and spending way more money than I need to every week. All right. Ben still gets a healthy chunk of my money if you're curious. This just really just makes it convenient for me to catch up on old stories, as well as like spinoffs and all these like Nick's email mentioned, like all of these spinoffs that I just can't afford. Like this gives me the platform and opportunity to read things like DC versus Vampires, which I wanted to pick up because the covers look cool and Otto Schmidt is doing the artwork. But I wasn't going to spend $5-6 on it because I already had a full pull list. Well, now with the DC Infinite app, I pay $100 a year and I can, it makes up for it in my opinion. So if you're someone that's kind of trying to figure out ways to, shop for comics responsibly, to explore, the DC comic catalog, but you just don't know where to jump in or don't have the money or time, I think the DC Infinite app is a good look.
And I think people who criticize that criticism, they don't really understand what comic book collectors do. We end up buying the same shit how many times?
I cannot tell you how many
times. A new hardcover?
I've bought.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think I own 3 different versions of Watchmen.
So it's exactly. So even like with this Nemo, it's like they had just came out with this 3-book with a slipcase. It's like, I want that slipcase. I got 2 of the books already, but I'm gonna buy this fucking thing with a slipcase. And
do you know why a lot of us gravitate towards these apps? Is because I don't want to fuck up the physical copy I got.
Yeah, that too.
You know how many times I've bought things, I'm like, well, I'm not going to read the physical. I might as well read it online so I don't get my greasy fucking pizza fingers on it. But yeah, anyway, DC Infinite Ultra, like I said, it's a hefty kind of price tag. If $100 for the year is a little bit, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I kind of definitely had second thoughts. But for the most part, it's been kind of nice being able to read relatively new comics just 30 days after they go on shelves. So check that out if you want. And I'll throw in a kind of a mandatory but honorable mention to God of War, which I have not had time to really dive into, but I've enjoyed what I liked so far, or what I've played so far, and I know that one's going to be a tearjerker and a hell of a ride. So if we miss any weeks from the podcast, you can blame me, you can blame God of War.
It's funny because they already have like all the cinemas online on YouTube, and there's like 8 or 9 hours of
Shaggy Black. I had posted about it. I think when I posted on our Instagram about it, Shaggy Black hit me up and was like, "Yo, I just watched all 6 hours of the cutscenes on YouTube. Good luck, brother." Awesome. All right, Shortbox Nation, that is all of our entertainment recommendations that we have for you today. It's your turn to chime in now. If you got a worthwhile champion pick that you feel that we and the rest of the Shortbox Nation might enjoy, whether it be a movie, a book you've been enjoying, a video game, an event, whatever it may be, we encourage you to share it with us. Tell us if you try out any of the recommendations we shared. Let us know if you got a new favorite, if we introduce you to something you like. We'd love to get some feedback. Hit us up on Instagram, Twitter, or email. All of those links are in this episode's show notes. This is normally where we have Ashley give us like a very wise and short and sweet. I think they call it brevity, right? Brevity, right? Something like that. I don't know. This is where she would give us a very nice, short and sweet and poignant outro, a lesson learned, or words of wisdom. We don't have her here, and I think it would take maybe 2 more of us to even reach that level of wisdom. So I think I think I can sum up today's episode and major takeaway. And that would be, putting on my serious hat and my serious voice. Don't be afraid to tell your heroes, friends, and loved ones what they mean to you, all right, while they're still around. If I've learned anything this week from, watching some of my, most beloved, comic artists and heroes in comics, give people their flowers where they can still smell them. It's been great to see all these stories and, praise being shared. And there's always that bittersweet sense of like, damn, this would be even better if, they were alive to see this.
I guess the positive thing when, the George Perez diagnosis, that he was able to see those flowers, that was nice to see. But yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. A part of me would love to believe, and it definitely believes that folks like Kevin Conroy probably got to see and experience and appreciate that, the love of fans. So that is your major takeaway, Shortbox Nation. All right. Tell someone that you love them and that you respect them. Well, there you have it, Shortbox Nation. Thank you for hanging out with us this week. If you enjoyed this episode, I ask you to do us just a small favor, but it has a large impact on this show, right? Help spread the word to a friend. Recommend us to someone you know that loves comics as much as we do. And if you're feeling extra generous, if you're like, I can knock that out easy, well, consider leaving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It won't cost you nothing except maybe 10 seconds and a couple of nice words, but it would mean a lot to us, all right? Imagine any time that you're on Amazon shopping for something, you're probably looking at the reviews and hoping someone has said something really nice about it. So, you feel good about buying it. That's how podcast reviews work for us, right? We want to encourage new potential listeners to give our show a shot. Next week, we'll be celebrating Kevin Conroy's iconic work as the Batman by revisiting our favorite episodes of Batman the Animated Series. That will be available exclusively on our Patreon, all right? It'll be part of the spin-off podcast series that we do called Pilot's License. It's a series completely dedicated to our favorite comic book cartoons and animated shows. So if you want to hear that episode for yourself, I recommend you join our Patreon community. You'll get access to bonus shows like the spin-off podcast. You'll be able to vote on episode voting topics. You also get access to video podcasts and a whole lot more. I'm telling you, I promise, it is well worth the very small fee of admission that we do charge, like $2 a month, $5 a month. Just go to patreon.com/theshortbox, all right? Check it out for yourself. Make your decision from there, but I promise you won't regret it. And if you haven't grown tired of my voice just yet, check out my appearance on the Dear Watchers podcast, where I talk about an alternate universe Namor who did not live under the sea like Sebastian the Crab, all right? Instead, this Namor lived on land and completely ignored his birthright as a ruler. It was in a What If comic in 2005. Really good stuff. That episode is out this week, so check out the Dear Watchers podcast. Big shout outs to the hosts, Rob and Guido. Guido, who is our newest Patreon subscriber.
Nice.
Hell yeah. Until we meet again, Shortbox Nation, take care of yourselves. Have a great day, and please continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.